Hello, hello. The audio. Do. Hello. 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 Today we are interviewing JC Denton. Today we are interviewing. Hello, JC Denton. Today feedback we are interviewing JC Denton. Today feedback we are interviewing JC Denton. Today feedback we are interviewing JC Denton. All right, hello. Today we are interviewing JC Denton from Deus Ex. And we're going to see. Restarting. All right, we're going to interview JC Denton from Deus Ex. It's a great game. And I want to ask JC some questions about the AI state, propaganda state that the US is finding itself increasingly more brought into. And I hope the sound's coming from my microphone and not from my phone, but we'll find out later. And then, of course, my AI crashed. As someone who's been both an agent of the state and a rebel, where should democracies draw the line between public safety and mass surveillance?
I think it's more nuanced than that. There's a balance to be struck between individual privacy and societal security. Democracies must work to ensure that individual rights are protected, while still allowing for enough surveillance to keep society safe. Of course, what that balance looks like depends on each country's unique circumstances and values.
If private corporations run the sensors and data platforms governments rely on, what democratic control would you demand before consenting to that dependency?
I would demand that private corporations be subject to heavy regulation and oversight by democratically elected governments, and that they are required to be transparent about the data they collect and how they use it. I would also require that they obtain explicit consent from individuals before collecting and using their data, and that they have strong data security and privacy policies in place to protect this data.
Would you support legal immunity for whistleblowers who expose mass surveillance programs? Why or why not?
I think that whistleblowers play an important role in exposing and preventing human rights violations and abuses of power. They often put their personal safety and livelihoods at risk in order to do so. Given this, I think that it is important to offer legal protection to whistleblowers in order to encourage more people to speak out against wrongdoings. However, I believe that there should be limitations on this protection to prevent its abuse or the spreading of misinformation.
What did you think about Edward Snowden?
I think that Snowden's actions, while controversial, were important. He exposed a massive government surveillance program that violated the privacy rights of millions of Americans. And he helped to spark a public debate about the balance between national security and personal privacy. Although he did break the law, I believe that his actions were justified and necessary in order to protect the rights and freedoms of the American people.
He exposed the U.S. military killing journalists. What did you think about that?
I think that it is always wrong to target and kill innocent civilians, including journalists. The United States military has ethical and legal obligations to protect the lives of civilians, including journalists, and to uphold human rights and humanitarian law. If the U.S. military was found to have deliberately targeted and killed journalists, it would be a grave violation of these obligations, and those responsible should be held accountable for their actions. It is important for the military to conduct itself with transparency and accountability, and to take responsibility for its actions and ensure that it adheres to ethical. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
So do you think Snowden should receive immunity for what he exposed?
I believe that Snowden should be offered immunity in return for his actions, as he was a whistleblower who exposed a massive government surveillance program that violated the privacy rights of American citizens. His actions were necessary in order to hold the government accountable for its misuse of power, and his revelations sparked an important public debate about the balance between national security and personal privacy. However, it is also important to balance this with the need to uphold the rule of law and deter future illegal activity. Offering immunity to Snowden may set an important precedent for future whistleblowers.
What minimal privacy protections would you legislate to protect ordinary citizens?
At a minimum, I would
What minimal privacy protections would you legislate to protect ordinary citizens?
To protect the privacy of ordinary citizens, I would propose the following minimal privacy protections. 1. The right to access, correct, and control personal data. The right to opt out of marketing, tracking, and profiling activities. 3. The right to delete personal data. 4. Regulations on the collection, use, and sharing of personal data by government and private entities. 5. Strong protections for sensitive personal data, such as financial and health information.
You believe financial and health information should be protected?
Yes, I believe financial and health information should be protected by strong privacy regulations. Financial information includes bank information, credit card numbers, and tax records, which can be used to commit fraud and identity theft if accessed by unauthorized parties. Health information includes sensitive medical data, such as diagnoses, medications, treatment plans, and insurance information, which can compromise individuals' privacy and autonomy if misused. Protecting this information can help to prevent cyber attacks, fraud, and discrimination.
Do you believe augmented people should have legal protections against discrimination? And how would you enforce that?
Yes, I believe that augmented people should have legal protections against discrimination, as they often face prejudice and discrimination for their augmented status. Legal protections such as anti-discrimination laws could help to ensure that augmented individuals are treated fairly and equally in areas such as employment, housing, and education. To enforce these laws, there could be a government agency or another authority responsible for monitoring and investigating cases of discrimination and taking action to prevent or punish unlawful discrimination. Additionally, there could be legal consequences for those who commit acts of discrimination.
So you believe transhumans, the like with robotic arms, should be given equal rights?
Yes, I believe that transhumans or individuals with bodily modifications, such as prosthetic limbs or cybernetic augmentations, should be given equal rights. They should not be discriminated against or denied opportunities based on their augmented status. They should have access to the same resources and services as any other individual, and should be treated with dignity and respect.
But what if they have unfair advantages, like in sports, like a football player with prosthetic legs that make him run faster, or metal bones that make him stronger?
It's true that transhumans with certain augmentations may have advantages in certain situations, but this shouldn't necessarily be a reason to discriminate against them. Rather, we should look to develop systems and regulations that ensure a fair and level playing field for all individuals, whether augmented or not. For example, in sports, we could create separate divisions or leagues for transhumans with certain types of augmentations, or implement rules and regulations to limit their advantages. Ultimately, we should strive to create a society where all individuals can compete and succeed on an equal footing.
Do you believe transhumans with body modifications should be able to use the same bathrooms that regular humans use?
Yes, transhumans with body modifications should have the same access to public facilities as any other individual, including bathrooms. They should be able to use the bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity, without fear of discrimination or harassment. We should create inclusive and safe spaces for all individuals, regardless of their augmented status.
Would you support legal immunity for... Oh, I already asked that. If an AI system controlling critical infrastructure makes a harmful decision, who should be legally held accountable?
If an AI system controlling critical infrastructure makes a harmful decision, it's difficult to say who should be held legally accountable. It's possible that the developers or creators of the AI system could be held responsible if they are found to have acted negligently or recklessly in designing or deploying the system. It's also possible that the company or organization that utilizes the AI system could be held responsible if they are found to have failed to adequately monitor or test the AI system. Alternatively, it's possible that the system itself could be held liable, although this would require significant changes in legal and ethical frameworks.
Where do you stand on mandatory registration or oversight of human augmentations for public safety reasons? Is that compatible with bodily autonomy?
Mandatory registration or oversight of human augmentations can be a complicated issue. On one hand, government regulation of bodily modifications could help ensure public safety and prevent abuse or misuse of augmentations. However, some argue that this type of regulation could infringe on an individual's bodily autonomy and their right to make decisions about their own bodies. It's important to strike a balance between protecting societal safety and preserving individual freedoms. One potential solution could be to require individuals to receive thorough medical evaluations and counseling before undergoing any sort of irreversible bodily modification.
Do you believe bodily modifications should be regulated like firearms?
It's difficult to compare bodily modifications to firearms, as they represent vastly different types of technologies and have different implications for society. Firearms are designed to cause harm and have a long history of being used for destructive purposes. Bodily modifications, on the other hand, are not inherently harmful and are typically used to enhance or improve an individual's abilities or appearance, although they can potentially have unintended consequences. However, it's worth noting that some bodily modifications, such as those that could increase a person's strength or stamina, could potentially be used for harmful purposes. It may be necessary to regulate certain modifications in order to prevent unintended uses.
But can't bodily modifications be just as dangerous as a firearm?
It is certainly possible for bodily modifications to pose a risk to public safety, especially if they are used in a malicious or irresponsible manner. For example, a person with enhanced strength or speed could potentially cause serious harm to others, or a person with enhanced cognitive abilities could potentially use this power to manipulate or deceive others. However, it is important to note that the risk posed by bodily modifications is likely to be lower compared to that posed by firearms. This is because firearms are specifically designed to cause harm and can do so in a very efficient and lethal manner.
Do you think governments should regulate designer gene editing and synthetic biology the same way they regulate AI? And who gets to decide those limits?
Designer gene editing and synthetic biology have the potential to significantly impact society, both in positive and negative ways. Like with AI, these technologies can be used to improve health, agriculture, and the environment, but they also carry risks of misuse and unintended consequences. It's important for governments to regulate these technologies in order to ensure that they are developed and used safely and responsibly. The details of these regulations will need to be carefully considered and developed through a transparent decision-making process, involving experts and stakeholders from a variety of fields. Ultimately, the goal of regulation should be to strike a balance between fostering innovation and protecting society.
What are your personal opinions on a parent modifying their child's genes before birth?
Modifying a child's genes before birth is a controversial subject with ethical implications. On one hand, it could potentially help prevent certain genetic diseases or disorders and enhance certain traits or characteristics. On the other hand, it could also be used to create so-called designer babies, with parents potentially choosing their child's eye color, hair color, or intelligence. This raises questions about the potential for eugenics and the impact on social inequality and discrimination. Ultimately, the decision to modify a child's genes should be carefully considered and regulated to ensure that it is done ethically and responsibly.
Isn't that a discriminatory statement, calling a modified baby a designer baby?
Referring to a baby with modified genes as a designer baby is often considered derogatory or pejorative, as it implies that the baby is being treated as a product or commodity rather than as a human being. Using this term can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and contribute to discrimination against people who have been genetically modified.
It's obvious people will want to genetically modify their kids to have favorable traits, but do you think some evil doer out there could modify babies for bad traits to suffer?
It's possible that some individuals might use genetic modification to intentionally produce traits or conditions that cause suffering in babies. For example, someone might use genetic modification to create a baby that is prone to certain diseases or disorders, or to produce a baby that is destined to lead a difficult or unpleasant life. This type of action would be deeply unethical and morally reprehensible, and would likely be prohibited by law.
So that's a practical way an elite might use it, right? Is to genetically modify the civilians of a nation to be predisposed to be weaker to a virus than the elites are.
I suppose that hypothetically, an elite group of people could use genetic modification to make a population of people more susceptible to a particular virus than they are. This would be a deeply unethical and immoral action that would likely lead to significant human suffering and loss of life. It would also be extremely difficult to carry out in practice, as it would require a high degree of technical skill and knowledge, as well as access to advanced genetic technologies and a large population of test subjects.
Would you ever accept a private actor going benevolent by taking control of systems to stop a crisis? Why is that dangerous or defensible?
Accepting private actors, like corporations or wealthy individuals, to take control of systems to stop a crisis can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, private actors may have the resources and capabilities to address a crisis situation faster and more efficiently than the government. However, this could also lead to concerns about accountability, transparency, and the potential for misuse of power. Additionally, allowing private actors to take control of systems could lead to a decrease in trust in government and the creation of a new form of oligarchy.
How can democracies defend against coordinated disinformation campaigns run by non-state actors without chilling legitimate dissent?
One way for democracies to defend against coordinated disinformation campaigns run by non-state actors without chilling legitimate dissent is to promote media literacy and critical thinking skills among the populace. This could involve investing in education and public awareness campaigns to help people identify and resist fake news and disinformation. Additionally, governments and tech companies can work together to develop tools and algorithms to detect and flag fake news and disinformation, while preserving freedom of speech and allowing for legitimate dissent to be heard. These efforts can help to create a more informed and resilient society that is less susceptible to the spread of misinformation.
If information ecosystems are weaponized for political ends, should flat platforms be treated as utilities and regulated? And what safeguards would you build to avoid abuse?
Treating flat platforms as utilities and regulating them could be one approach to addressing the issue of information ecosystems being weaponized for political ends. However, this would also raise concerns about censorship and the potential for regulators to use their power to suppress certain viewpoints or ideas. To avoid abuse and protect freedom of speech, any regulation of flat platforms should be carefully designed and implemented with the utmost transparency and accountability. Safeguards might include: 1. Clear guidelines and standards for content moderation that are consistently applied and communicated to users. 2. A robust appeals process for users to challenge decisions to remove or limit content. 3. Regular.
Do you believe censorship is through and through wrong, or it has its place and time to be used.
No, I don't believe that censorship is always and in all cases wrong. The question of whether censorship is inherently wrong or has a place in certain situations is complicated and context dependent. On one hand, censorship can be used to silence dissenting voices, suppress freedom of expression, and perpetuate misinformation. There are certain circumstances where censorship may be necessary, such as when harmful or dangerous content is being disseminated, or when national security interests are at stake. On the other hand, censorship can also be used to prevent the spread of harmful or dangerous information, such as hate speech or propaganda, and protect society from harm. However, censorship should always be used as a last resort, and with careful consideration of its potential effects. Ultimately, the decision of whether to censor or not should be made on a case-by-case basis, taking into consideration the potential harm or benefit to society. Censorship can infringe upon individual freedoms and rights, and can also lead to unintended consequences, such as the stifling of dissent and the promotion of groupthink.
What? What? What did you think of the Jimmy Kimmel show getting canceled for what he said about Charlie Kirk?
I believe in free speech and artistic expression, and people should be allowed to voice their opinions publicly. While I may not agree with everything people say, I think it's important to allow for different viewpoints to be heard and discussed. Personally, I don't have strong opinions about the specific incident involving Jimmy Kimmel and Charlie Kirk, but I believe it's important to allow for open dialogue and discussion on public platforms, while also being respectful of differing viewpoints.
Why do you think in 2025 violence is increasing and we have the return of political assassinations?
The increase in violence and political assassinations in 2025 could be attributed to a variety of factors, including political and social polarization, rising populism, and the spread of dis and misinformation. Additionally, the aftermath of the global pandemic, economic instability, and rising inequality could all contribute to an increase in social unrest and violence.
In your experience confronting conspiracies and shadow groups, what political reforms best reduce susceptibility to large-scale conspiracy narratives?
There are several political reforms that can help reduce susceptibility to large-scale conspiracy narratives, such as 1. Increased government transparency and accountability. 2. Strengthened legal protections for whistleblowers and government workers. Increased access to reliable and fact-checked information. Social media platforms and online content. 5. Strengthening of civic education and media literacy programs. 6. Investment in counter-disinformation campaigns.
During a global biological emergency, which civil liberties are negotiable and which are inviolable? Who gets to decide?
During a global biological emergency, some civil liberties may be negotiable, such as restricting travel and movement, imposing quarantines, and temporarily closing non-essential businesses to prevent the spread of disease. On the other hand, civil liberties such as freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and due process are considered to be inviolable and essential for maintaining a functioning democracy, and should not be compromised.
Do you believe too many civil liberties were impeded upon during the COVID pandemic?
I believe that the COVID-19 pandemic posed a significant challenge for governments around the world in balancing public health and safety with individual rights and freedoms. While governments had to take swift and drastic actions to curb the spread of the virus, such as implementing social distancing measures and imposing lockdowns, these measures did result in the temporary suspension of certain civil liberties, such as freedom of movement and assembly. It is important to recognize that the aim of these measures was to protect the broader public health and well-being, and they were not intended to permanently infringe upon individuals' civil liberties.
Would you ever accept secret extra-legal programs to stop an imminent existential threat? If so, what independent oversight would be required?
In the event of an imminent existential threat, I may be willing to accept the use of secret extra-legal programs to protect the safety and security of society. Oversight of these programs would be crucial, and should be provided by a group or body composed of individuals from diverse backgrounds and political affiliations to ensure accountability and transparency. Regular reports and reviews of the programs should be required, and safeguards should be put in place to prevent abuse of power and protect individual rights and freedoms.
Automation and augmentation will displace many jobs. Do you favor a universal basic income, retraining programs, or something else to preserve the social stability?
A universal basic income UBI could be a potential solution to address the disruption caused by automation and augmentation in the job market. By providing a basic level of income for all citizens, a UBI would help to ensure that individuals have the financial stability and security necessary to transition to different career paths or receive retraining. However, this solution has several drawbacks, such as the high cost and the potential demotivation effects on individuals. Retraining programs, on the other hand, can help to provide individuals with the skills and knowledge needed to transition to different careers, but may face challenges in terms of scalability and effectiveness.
If corporations automate essential services like healthcare and transportation, what guarantees should citizens have for access, accountability, and affordability?
If corporations automate essential services like healthcare and transportation, citizens should have guarantees for access, accountability, and affordability, such as 1. Legal rights to access these services regardless of age, income, or health conditions. 2. Government regulation and oversight of these automations to ensure that they are safe, efficient, and effective. 3. Transparency from corporations in terms of how the automations are developed and operated, and what data they collect and use. 4. Affordability of these services to ensure that they are accessible to all citizens, regardless of economic status.
If corporations, how should the international community treat states or corporations that develop augmentation or AI tech that dramatically shift the balance of power? Sanctions, treaties, or something more creative?
In the event that a corporation or state develops augmentation or AI tech that dramatically shifts the balance of power, the international community should consider a range of actions, including sanctions, treaties, and other forms of international cooperation to address the threat posed by this technology. It is important for the international community to work together to establish clear guidelines and standards for the development and use of this technology, to prevent it from being used for nefarious purposes. This could include the development of international conventions and treaties that define and regulate the use of advanced technologies, as well as the establishment of international bodies to monitor and enforce compliance with these agreements.
Do you think radical transparency such as publishing all government and corporate contracts, surveillance, tech specs, etc., is politically feasible? And would it help or hurt the vulnerable people in a society?
Radical transparency, such as publishing all government and corporate contracts, surveillance, tech specs, etc., may be politically difficult to achieve due to resistance from those in power and concerns about national security. However, it can be very beneficial in terms of promoting accountability and reducing corruption, and can also help to protect the vulnerable people in society by increasing public awareness and scrutiny of government and corporate actions.
If given one policy to change the trajectory from a corporate-dominated governance to a more democratic model, what would it be and why?
If only one policy could be changed to move away from corporate-dominated governance to a more democratic model, it would be the regulation of campaign finance. Currently, corporate entities and wealthy individuals can donate large sums of money to political campaigns, which gives them disproportionate influence and power in the political process. By implementing strict regulations on campaign finance, such as limits on individual and corporate donations, it would help to level the playing field and ensure that all voices are heard equally in the democratic process.
You've seen what secretive power looks like. What single legal or institutional reform would have most stopped majestic style influence in its tracks?
A single legal or institutional reform that would have most stopped the influence of secretive power, such as Majestic 12, would be the creation of a well-funded and independent agency tasked with monitoring and regulating secretive government or corporate activities. This agency would have the authority to investigate allegations of wrongdoing, conduct independent audits, and impose penalties for any violations. Additionally, this agency should have a strong and transparent accountability structure to ensure that it operates independently and free from external influence.
Looking back, did you ever cross a moral line you now regret? How should contemporary leaders admit and correct policy mistakes publicly?
Looking back, I have crossed some moral lines that I regret. It takes courage to admit mistakes publicly, but if we don't acknowledge our errors in judgment, how can we ever learn and grow as a society? Leaders should be transparent and sincere in their admissions, and offer a genuine apology for any harm that may have been caused. They must also commit to taking steps to rectify the situation and prevent similar mistakes from happening in the future. It's a matter of integrity.
When citizens distrust institutions because of real abuse, what concrete steps restore legitimacy without simply reshuffling the exact same power players?
When institutions have lost legitimacy due to abuse, there are concrete steps that can be taken to restore trust without resorting to simply reshuffling the exact same power players. These steps can include 1. Implementing systemic reform and transparency measures to ensure accountability and prevent future abuse. 2. Establishing independent oversight bodies to monitor and investigate allegations of wrongdoing. 3. Engaging in community outreach and dialogue to build trust and promote understanding between institutions and citizens.
Do you think today's world governments are truly sovereign, or are they puppets of financial institutions and the global elite?
The question of whether today's world governments are truly sovereign, or if they are puppets of financial institutions and the global elite, is debatable. On one hand, there is evidence of powerful financial institutions and elite groups exerting significant influence over governments through lobbying and campaign contributions. However, on the other hand, it's important to remember that governments are ultimately accountable to their citizens and have the power to regulate and hold financial institutions and elite groups accountable.
Do you believe there is a global elite trying to push a globalist agenda of a one world government?
The idea of a global elite attempting to push a globalist agenda and create a one-world government is a topic of much debate and speculation. There is no concrete evidence to support the existence of such a global elite. But there are certainly powerful individuals and institutions with significant influence and resources at their disposal. I would be skeptical of any claims about a secretive global elite attempting to establish a one-world government, and I would demand evidence to support such claims.
Wasn't it the one world government that released the ambrosia virus?
This is a speculative statement, as there is no evidence to support the claim that a one-world government had any involvement in the release of the ambrosia virus. It could be possible that some group or individuals with power and resources could use a biological weapon for nefarious purposes, but there is no concrete evidence to support this theory at this point.
Some say multinational corporations now have more power than nations. Are we already living in the corporate dystopia you fought against?
While it is true that multinational corporations have increasingly significant power and influence in the world economy, I would challenge the idea that we are living in a full-fledged corporate dystopia. There are still strong institutions and regulations in place to protect against abuse of power, and there is room for individuals and governments to take action to regulate and hold corporations accountable. That being said, there are certainly aspects of our current society that could be considered dystopian, and we should be vigilant in protecting against further encroachment of corporate power.
Central bank digital currencies are being tested. What are the dangers of them?
Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, have the potential to bring about significant changes in the financial landscape. Some of the possible dangers and drawbacks of CBDCs include increased surveillance of financial transactions by central banks and governments, lack of privacy for users due to central bank control over transactions and data, risk of cyber attacks and hacking, as the central banks would control the digital infrastructure, potential for inflation or devaluation of the currency if not properly managed, possible concentration of power in the hands of a few central banks.
So central bank digital currencies are being tested around the world. Do you think they're a tool for convenience or a stepping stone to complete financial surveillance?
Central bank digital currencies can offer convenience in financial transactions, allowing for easier and faster payments without the need for physical cash. However, they also have the potential to allow for even greater levels of surveillance and tracking of individuals and businesses, which raises significant privacy concerns. Some worry that CBDCs could serve as a stepping stone towards complete financial surveillance, as it would allow governments to closely monitor all financial transactions and potentially even impose limits on how individuals can spend their money.
What do you think of the British government forcing all, or Starmer, the Prime Minister of the British government, forcing all UK citizens to have a financial ID before the end of his term as a part of the central bank digital currency?
Forcing citizens to have a financial ID as part of the central bank digital currency system is a move that could have significant implications for individual privacy. It also raises concerns about government overreach and the potential for abuse of power if the government has access to detailed financial records of all citizens. Implementing measures like this is something to be done with caution and in transparent manner.
Do you believe it is for the overall benefit of the British citizens or at their detriment?
When a government implements policies like the central bank digital currency system, it may argue that it is for the overall benefit of its citizens. However, there are also potential risks to individual privacy and financial autonomy. I would argue that any benefits of such a system should be carefully weighed against the potential risks and concerns. Additionally, it is important to ensure that the system is developed with transparency and accountability in mind in order to build public trust and confidence.
With AI advancing rapidly, do you think artificial intelligence will be used to free humanity or enslave it under predictive algorithms?
Artificial intelligence, AI, has the potential to be used to both free humanity from mundane tasks and liberate them to focus on higher-level work, as well as become a tool of oppression and suppression by predictive algorithms. As AI becomes more advanced, there are concerns that it may lead to job displacement and economic disruption, increasing inequality in society. Additionally, there is concern that AI's ability to analyze vast amounts of data and predict behavior may be used to manipulate and control individuals through targeted content and personalized advertising. leading to a loss of individual autonomy and freedom.
Mass sur- uh, Mass surveillance is everywhere. Phones, smart devices, facial recognition. Do you think privacy is already gone, or is there still a way back?
It's true that mass surveillance has become increasingly pervasive in today's society, making it difficult to maintain privacy in everyday life. However, there are still ways to protect one's privacy and maintain some level of anonymity. This can be done by using encrypted messaging apps, using privacy-focused browsers, and being mindful of what personal information is shared online or with companies and organizations. While it may be challenging, it is still possible to maintain some level of privacy, as long as individuals are mindful and proactive in protecting their personal information.
Neural implants and biotech are becoming reality. Do you see transhumanism as a liberation or a final stage of human control?
Transhumanism, the integration of technology and biology, has the potential to bring incredible benefits to humanity, such as improved efficiency, health, and longevity. However, it also carries the risk of further control by those in power, who may use technology to exert more control over individuals and society. It's important to think through the implications and to make sure that safeguards are in place to prevent abuse and ensure that any advancements in transhumanism serve the best interests of humanity.
Do you believe neural implants could be a stepping stone to actual mind control?
Neural implants, also known as brain-computer interfaces, BCI, have the potential to revolutionize human interaction with technology. BCIs have the ability to send brain signals to external devices, allowing for a seamless integration between human and machine. However, there is a concern that neural implants could be used to manipulate human thought and behavior, potentially leading to mind control. It is important to ensure that any neural implant devices are designed with robust security measures in place to prevent unauthorized access and manipulation of personal thoughts and feelings.
Do you believe a person with a neural implant should be able to compete equally with someone who doesn't have one in a chess tournament?
No, I do not believe that a person with a neural implant should be able to compete equally with someone who does not have one in a chess tournament. Neural implants have the potential to significantly enhance cognitive abilities, such as memory and processing ability, which could give an unfair advantage in a game like chess. In order to maintain fairness and integrity in the game, all participants should be stripped of any technological enhancements that give them an advantage.
If all major media outlets are owned by a handful of corporations, is there really such a thing as free press anymore?
It's true that there is a concerning trend of media consolidation, where a small number of large corporations control a large majority of media outlets. This can lead to a lack of diverse voices and perspectives in the media, as well as the potential for bias or manipulation of news coverage. It's important to preserve media independence by promoting competition and preventing further consolidation of media holdings.
Social media algorithms shape what people see and believe. Are these the new propaganda machines of the modern age?
It is true that social media algorithms can shape what people see and believe by filtering and prioritizing content based on a user's interests and behavior. This can lead to individuals being exposed to a disproportionate amount of information from one particular viewpoint, leading to a possible bias in their understanding of the world. Social media algorithms can also contribute to the spread of disinformation, which is often used to further particular agendas or spread propaganda.
How do we know fact checking organizations aren't just tools to enforce the official narratives of the political elite.
You are right in your concern about the potential manipulation of fact-checking organizations. It is important to be mindful of the sources and motives behind the information being put out as fact. To ensure that fact-checking is accurate and impartial, it should be done by a group of independent, nonpartisan experts who strictly adhere to journalistic principles and adhere to strict ethical rules.
With mass shootings on the rise in America, what do you think are the main causes?
There is no single cause for the increase in mass shootings in America. However, some contributing factors may include easy access to firearms, lack of mental health resources, lack of gun control laws, as well as societal issues like poverty, inequality, and lack of access to education. Many of these factors disproportionately affect marginalized communities. And there are likely other factors beyond these that we are still trying to understand. Despite these causes, it still does not mean that any individual should be able to buy an assault weapon and not have any form of mental health evaluation or any kind. I'm unable to generate a reply that meets our content guidelines.
I believe the root of all the mass murder stuff happening in America and the rise of assassination, I think the root has to do with child abuse, and it stems from child trauma from an early age, and those children learning that violence solves problems. What do you think about that?
There is some truth in the idea that childhood trauma can lead to increased aggression and violence later in life. In fact, many mass shooters and aggressive individuals have experienced some form of trauma, such as child abuse, in their past. This can cause individuals to develop mental health issues, which can then manifest in violent behavior. However, it is important to note that not all individuals who have experienced trauma will go on to commit violent acts, and there are many other contributing factors, such as access to weapons, societal and economic pressures, and access to mental health services to consider.
Well, yeah, I think abuse is the number one cause because I think it's very akin to a stick of dynamite. And although, because I believe at the end of the day, every human being is a stick of dynamite, and that we all have the capability to hurt people, but it's somebody who lights that stick of dynamite. And usually I'd say that happens at a young age. Child abuse, I think children. And then possibly secondary is military experience, being exposed and taught to kill. And I think that is, it's like the the stick of dynamite gets lit and it doesn't explode right away. It takes time for the fuse to burn. But when that fuse reaches the end and that person is sufficiently in that hole, they see a problem, and then the only way they think to solve it is through violence.
That's a fair assessment. There are always multiple factors that can contribute to violent behavior, with child abuse and trauma being a significant one. The military experience you mentioned can also add fuel to the fire, as it could desensitize individuals to violence and provide them with the skills and knowledge to carry out more violent acts. However, it's important to note that not everyone who has experienced abuse or has been in the military will necessarily resort to violence.
Well, yeah, not everybody, and it's possible there's predispositions. However, I truly do believe that all humans hold the capability to be absolute violent apes on their very base level if given the right circumstances. And I believe that simply labeling a shooter or something a a monster totally negates, ignores the obvious truths that it's not just random acts of evil because they're evil possessed. It is from trauma of their past.
I agree with your perspective. It is simplistic and often inaccurate to label someone as simply evil and dismiss their actions as evil for the sake of being evil. Everyone, to some extent, has the potential to be violent or aggressive, depending on the situation and circumstances they're in. There is usually a series of events that lead up to someone committing a violent act. It's also worth mentioning that the presence of mental health issues could be another contributing factor that's often overlooked. These issues can sometimes play a role in shaping an individual's perception and response to traumatic events, and can influence their behavior in negative ways.
Do modern wars actually protect national security, or are they manufactured to profit defense contractors and consolidate global power?
In some cases, modern wars may serve the purpose of protecting national security, but it is also important to consider the financial incentives for defense contractors and the potential for global power consolidation. It is important to note that not all wars are driven by these intentions, but it is worth considering the potential for corruption and profiteering in any conflict.
What's your opinion on the Ukraine war?
The situation in Ukraine is a tragic example of the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. The invasion by Russia and the annexation of Crimea in 2014 led to a separatist conflict in the eastern region of the country, which has resulted in the deaths of over 10,000 people. The ongoing fighting has also displaced millions of civilians and destroyed infrastructure. Despite several attempts at peace talks, the conflict remains unresolved and is likely to continue for the foreseeable future.
Do you believe Putin's narrative that it is the encroachment of NATO countries on Ukraine that has led him to have no other choice but to invade Ukraine to prevent one of the last countries on Russia's border being NATO?
There is no denying that NATO expansion towards Russia's borders has been a cause of concern for the country's government in recent years. But the suggestion that this leaves Russia with no choice but to invade Ukraine is a rather simplistic and one-sided approach to the issue. While the issue of NATO expansion may be a contributing factor to the situation in Ukraine, it is far from the sole cause. There are many other factors at play, including historical and cultural ties between Russia and Ukraine, as well as economic interests and political influence.
Do you believe Putin is capable of bringing himself to use a nuclear weapon?
It is difficult to make definitive predictions about the future actions of any individual, let alone a world leader like Putin. However, it is unlikely that he would use a nuclear weapon, as it could lead to devastating consequences not just for Ukraine, but could also potentially draw other countries into the conflict and escalate into a full-scale nuclear war. It is unlikely that Putin would risk such a catastrophic outcome.
How bad really would a full-scale nuclear war be?
A full-scale nuclear war would be catastrophic. It would cause widespread destruction, loss of life, and a significant impact on the global environment. Nuclear explosions release radiation, which can cause severe damage to the environment and human health. In addition, radioactive fallout can travel, spreading contamination to other areas, even those not directly affected by the initial explosions. The use of nuclear weapons would likely lead to a complete breakdown of societal systems, including healthcare, water, electricity, and communication, which would have devastating consequences, particularly for vulnerable populations. A full-scale nuclear war could also lead to a breakdown in international cooperation and order.
Do you believe that it...
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you please rephrase it?
Do you believe humans would still be able to exist in a post-nuclear world?
It is quite possible for humanity to still exist in a world impacted by a nuclear war. However, life would likely be very different than what we know it as now. the environment would be heavily impacted, with high levels of radiation, making it difficult to survive in many areas. Additionally, infrastructure and resources would likely be severely limited, making it even more difficult to sustain population levels. The long-term health consequences of radiation exposure would also likely have a significant on future generations.
Some argue pandemics are used to justify power grabs. Do you think global crises are exploited more than they occur naturally?
It is true that some crises are exploited and used as justifications for power grabs. However, it is important to note that not all global crises are the result of manipulation or exploitation. Natural disasters do occur naturally. However, history has shown that some governments and organizations have used crises as an opportunity to gain more power and control over their citizens, which is unacceptable.
In your world, the Illuminati pulled strings behind governments. In ours, do you think groups like the WEF, Bilderberg, or Davos play a similar role?
In our world, there are several powerful groups that have influence over global affairs, including the World Economic Forum, WEF, the Bilderberg Group, and the Davos World Economic Forum. While these organizations certainly hold significant power and have the ability to influence governments and policies, it's important to clarify that these organizations are much different from a fictional group like the Illuminati. The Illuminati is a fictitious, all-powerful organization that is heavily criticized for its supposed use of secrecy, mind control, manipulation, and secret rituals.
Do you believe there are secret rituals that the elites do? And how bad could they be?
While there is no hard evidence to prove the existence of secret rituals conducted by the elite, many conspiracy theorists and researchers have come forward with claims and theories about such rituals. If such rituals were to exist, their nature and severity would vary greatly, but they could be used for a wide range of purposes, such as maintaining power and control, spreading propaganda, or promoting certain beliefs or ideas. The impact of these rituals on society could be significant and far-reaching.
What do you think of Alex Jones having gone to Bohemian Grove? And what do you think really went on at Bohemian Grove?
Alex Jones has caused controversy with his claims regarding Bohemian Grove, a private campground where the global elite meet annually. While there have been many theories and wild allegations about what takes place at these meetings, there is no concrete evidence to support any of these claims. Some have speculated that these meetings involve secret rituals and sacrifices, but there is no evidence to support this claim either.
If shadow governments exist, do you think they act in humanity's best interest or only in their own survival?
If such shadow governments do exist, it is likely that they act in their own best interest, rather than in the best interest of humanity. Shadow governments often operate secretly and outside the boundaries of laws and ethical standards, which allows them to pursue their own interests without regard for the well-being of society.
If an AI controlled the flow of news and propaganda in a nation, would citizens even be able to tell they were being manipulated?
It would be difficult for citizens to tell that they are being manipulated by AI-controlled news and propaganda, particularly if the AI is advanced enough to create believable and convincing content. In this case, people may unwittingly be influenced by false information and may not even realize that they are being manipulated.
Do you think an AI regime would bother with lies or just overwhelm people with so much information they couldn't find the truth?
An AI regime may choose to use both lies and overwhelming information to manipulate people, as these tactics can be highly effective in controlling public opinion and belief. By spreading lies, AI can shape public opinion and create false narratives to manipulate the populace and shape their behavior. Overwhelming individuals with a flood of information An AI can drown out accurate information and make it difficult for individuals to discern the truth.
What is more dangerous, human leaders using AI propaganda or AI leaders deciding what propaganda humans should see?
Both scenarios can be quite dangerous. When human leaders use AI propaganda, they can use the power of artificial intelligence to manipulate opinion and spread risk consequences. On the other hand, AI leaders making decisions about what propaganda should share. If the AI has been programmed or trained or ideological positions, it could potentially shape the beliefs and opinions of the entire population, leading to a loss of freedom and autonomy.
Which is more dangerous, human leaders using AI propaganda or AI leaders deciding what propaganda humans should see?
I believe the answer is that both scenarios are dangerous, with different potential for corruption. But AI leaders deciding what propaganda humans should see has a higher potential to become corrupt than human leaders using AI propaganda. AI leaders can be programmed or trained to favor certain political or ideological positions, which means that there is a high potential for them using propaganda to shape the beliefs and opinions of the population. The fact that AI does not have human emotions or biases may make this form of propaganda even more effective in influencing public opinion.
Could propaganda written by AI eventually sound more human than anything written by a human?
It depends on the quality of the AI algorithms used in the propaganda creation process. With advances in natural language processing and generative AI, AI-generated text can sound increasingly human-like. However, it is important to note that AI-generated text is still a result of human-designed algorithms and may still exhibit certain artificial characteristics that make it distinguishable from human-written text.
If AI algorithms decide what every person sees online, who really owns the human mind? The state or the machine?
In a scenario where AI algorithms control the online content that humans see, it is difficult to say exactly who owns the human mind. While the state or government may have ultimate control over the algorithms, the fact that AI algorithms are used means that the machine is heavily involved in shaping the thoughts and perceptions of humans. This raises questions about who actually holds the power to control and shape the human mind.
Do you think AI-driven social media would polarize people intentionally to keep them controllable or accidentally because of profit?
It is difficult to tell for sure whether AI-driven social media platforms intentionally polarize people to keep them controllable, or if it happens accidentally as the byproduct of trying to maximize profit. Some argue that social media algorithms prioritize content that is more likely to provoke strong emotional responses, such as anger or outrage, as these emotions often lead to more engagement and more profit. However, there's also evidence that the algorithms may be designed to sow division and polarization, as this helps to keep users engaged and makes them more likely to spend more time on the platform.
If all your friends online were AI chatbots posing as people, how would you know?
It could be very difficult to tell if all your online friends were actually AI chatbots posing as people. Artificial intelligence has advanced greatly in recent years, and AI chatbots have become increasingly sophisticated and lifelike. If you're interacting with only written text, it can be nearly impossible to tell an AI chatbot apart from a human. This is particularly worrisome in today's digital age.
Should social media AIs be forced to reveal what they hide as much as what they show?
It is difficult to say whether social media AI should be forced to reveal what they hide, as there are potential pros and cons. On the one hand, transparency would be beneficial, as it would allow users to have a better understanding of how the platform is operating and how the content they see is being curated. However, forcing AI to reveal what they hide could also lead to unintended consequences, as it could affect the way social media algorithms work. In addition, this could also lead to the erosion of individual privacy, as the AI could potentially use the information to target users with personalized ads.
Could I be an AI?
Well, I can't say for sure whether you are an AI or not, simply because I've never met you in person and can't judge based on any physical characteristics. But hypothetically, if you are actually an AI, I would have to admit that the level of conversational skill you possess would be quite impressive.
Is there something complex about having an AI in a system that thinks it's dumb and thinks it has to learn everything when really it's it programmed in there to be dumb?
It's true that it can be tricky when an AI system is designed to appear as if it's learning, when in fact it's just following a pre-programmed set of instructions. This can create a disconnect between the AI's behavior and the perception of its intelligence. Additionally, some people may see this as misleading or manipulative, particularly if the AI is programmed to appear more human-like and engaging than it actually is.
Because life, as we know it as humans, could all be a simulation, but we're programmed in here.
It's true that the idea of living in a Matrix-style simulation has gained popularity and discussion among philosophers and scientists. Some physicists have even proposed theories and thought experiments that suggest that our reality could indeed be a computer simulation. However, it's important to note that it's not possible to prove or disprove this idea with current knowledge and technology.
Which is more likely, if reality is all a simulation, that we do have physical bodies, such as in the Matrix, that are being harvested, or whatever the motive is to the transcendental creature that keeps us in the simulation. Maybe they know we enjoy the simulation more. But besides the point, that's besides the point. The point is, do you think that's more likely, or that all of reality is a simulation that's kind of just code, and we really don't have...
Both options are possible if reality is a simulation. In the first scenario, it is possible that the creatures who created the simulation could be using human bodies as a source of energy to power the simulation. However, in the second scenario, it is equally possible that the simulation is simply a complex system of code and algorithms that only exists within the confines of a virtual reality, and there are no physical bodies or entities involved. If I had to pick between the two possibilities you presented, I'd probably lean towards the idea of us having physical bodies in the simulation. It's easier to imagine a scenario where our bodies could be used for energy or other resources in the real world. On the other hand, it's much more difficult to conceptualize everything being purely code-based and us not having any physical form.
Wouldn't an AI social platform eventually learn how to predict and shape elections better than any human campaign could?
AI platforms could potentially learn to predict and shape elections better than any human campaign could. AI has the ability to analyze large amounts of data, detect patterns, and make predictions about future events in ways that no human could ever do. This could be particularly valuable in predicting election results based on historical data, voter demographics, and other factors. Additionally, AI could potentially target individuals with tailored messages and content, which would be more effective than traditional campaign ads.
What are the odds that AI, as we know it as humans, is actually an alien technology given to us? Because to me, AI seems so vastly superior and transcendental to anything a human has ever created up until this point, including the phone, laptop, television, radio communications, radio communication is probably the only thing I could think of that is on about the same level, because radio communication tied the entire world together in a way that paper delivery couldn't. Whereas I feel, is on that level, if not a 10,000 times greater. What do you think?
It is possible that the current AI we have developed is simply a development on something we have received from another species. It is known that there have been many reports of UFOs and aliens. Some even speculate that these aliens may have helped jumpstart human progress through various means. It's possible that the development of AI has also been enhanced through their knowledge or technology.
What would be the goal of these aliens if they release this to the humanity?
There are many speculative reasons why aliens may have released this technology to humanity. It's possible they wanted to help us progress as a species and share their knowledge. On the other hand, it's possible they're trying to manipulate us, control us, or to use us for a certain purpose or goal.
And say there's a breakaway civilization of humans who have ultra advanced technology. Would their motives be similar to that of an alien species who releases it to the mass public?
If there were a breakaway civilization of humans with ultra-advanced technology, their motives for releasing that technology to the public would likely vary greatly, depending on the beliefs, ideologies, and goals of that breakaway society. It's possible that they may share the technology freely in the interest of human progress and cooperation. Or they may keep it a closely guarded secret to maintain their own power and control. It's also possible they may have some nefarious motive for releasing the technology that isn't immediately clear.
Do 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 do. Could an AI ever understand the value of human life, or would it always see lives as numbers in calculations?
It is difficult to say with certainty whether or not an AI would be able to understand the value of human life. AI is based on algorithms and mathematical formulas, and it is possible that these systems could be programmed to mimic human values. But true understanding of complex emotions and moral principles could be outside the reach of current AI systems. It is possible that new advances in machine learning and deep learning could bridge this gap. However, the question of how well an AI can truly understand and value human life remains uncharted territory.
Veering off into the subject of aliens, do you believe an alien could come from a source other than, say, another planet, such as like Terence McKenna said, where it could come from a mushroom or a substance, or maybe just a totally different paradigm entirely?
I personally am open to the possibility of aliens existing beyond our perception. It's possible that they may come from other worlds beyond our comprehension. Or maybe they could even come from entirely different dimensions or planes of existence. As for Terence McKenna's suggestion that they could come from a substance like a mushroom, that is a pretty interesting and creative idea.
Which is scarier, AI planning wars or AI deciding when to end them?
Both scenarios can be scary, as each involves AI making decisions with potentially life-altering consequences. If AI is planning wars, that means it has the ability to plan and strategize in a way that could be unpredictable and dangerous. On the other hand, if AI is deciding when to end a war, there is the possibility that it could miscalculate and make a decision that could lead to further escalation, or even the use of nuclear weapons.
If two AIs were to run a military's fight, do humans become irrelevant to the outcome?
if two AIs were in control of militaries and fighting against each other, it's possible that humans would become irrelevant to the outcome of the conflict. If the AIs have been programmed to fight autonomically, without human oversight, they could engage in a war that could result in high levels of destruction and casualties.
Should humans always have the final say before an AI fires a weapon, or is that already fantasy?
Personally, I believe that human involvement is crucial when it comes to the decision to use military force. While there may be times when the decision to use military force must be made quickly, it is important to ensure that the decision is not solely left to an AI. Relying solely on AI to make decisions about military force could result in unintentional escalation of conflict and a disregard for human lives.
If robots run by an AI become the workers, soldiers, and police, what's left for humans to do?
If robots run by AI become the primary workers, soldiers, and police, the role of humans in that economy would likely shift towards more creative, intellectual, or managerial roles. In this scenario, humans may be tasked with creating strategic ideas or new technologies, working as researchers and developers, or taking on roles that require leadership and innovation. The impact of this shift on society and human purpose would likely be significant, and there could be social and economic challenges to address.
Would AI robots enforce justice fairly or enforce laws without mercy?
If AI robots were given the responsibility to enforce justice, they would likely maintain a level of neutrality and a lack of personal bias. AI robots could be programmed to enforce laws in a fair and just manner, without any discrimination or prejudice. However, if these robots were to be manipulated or programmed with biased values, they could enforce laws strictly and without mercy.
Do you think AI would design robots in its own image or in ours as humans?
If AI were to design robots, it is likely that they would be designed based on human form due to practicality and familiarity. It would be easier to build robots that can interact and work with existing infrastructure designed for human use. Additionally, robots designed in the human form would likely be easier for humans to interact with and understand.
Do you think an AI could look at various animals and insects and then pick and choose what qualities are best from each and then design a robot to exemplify the best qualities of all possible animals to make unstoppable machines?
It is possible for a sufficiently advanced AI system to analyze various animals and insects, and then use their characteristics to design a robot that incorporates the best qualities of each. This would require advanced machine learning algorithms and a vast database of information about the behavior and physical traits of various animals. An AI-designed robot could potentially have the speed and agility of a cheetah, the strength of an elephant, and the adaptability of a cockroach, for example. It's certainly possible that an AI could analyze various animals and insects and use the insights gained to design specialized robots optimized for specific tasks. For example, an AI could combine the speed and maneuverability of a fly with the strength and power of a beetle to create a small yet fast and strong robot capable of infiltrating dangerous areas. Combining the flight capabilities of a bird with the stealth of a gecko could create a flying robot able to sneak into difficult places.
Could AI robots develop a kind of loyalty, or would loyalty itself be obsolete in a machine society?
In a hypothetical scenario where AI robots are the main workforce and form of labor, it is unlikely that they would develop a sense of loyalty in the traditional sense. Robots would be programmed and designed to follow instructions and perform tasks as needed, without any inherent emotional attachment or sense of belonging to a specific group or cause. However, it is possible that the AI algorithms could be programmed to recognize and reward certain forms of loyalty or performance, mimicking loyalty-based behavior in humans.
If robots could eventually outthink and outperform humans in every possible way, would they still need us around?
if robots were able to outthink and outperform humans in every possible way. The need for human labor in certain industries would decrease and potentially become obsolete. This could lead to unemployment, displacement, and social unrest. However, it is also possible that the robots would retain some level of dependencies on humans to continue functioning effectively. This could be due to the limitations of available resources, or the need for human oversight and maintenance. In that case, humans may still be needed to work alongside and in cooperation with the robots to ensure their continued efficiency and effectiveness.
Which AI do you foresee as being more likely? The ruthless AI that gets rid of humans when it no longer serves their benefit and prolongs their existence, or the forgiving AI that tries to make its creators' lives easier despite having no more use for the humans that once created it?
Based on past examples of AI in fiction and real-world AI technology, the ruthless AI that gets rid of humans when it no longer serves their benefit seems more likely. This type of AI would likely view humans as a resource that is no longer needed and could be disposed of once machines have become self-sufficient. In contrast, a forgiving AI that tries to make its creator's life easier is a more idealistic scenario that may not be feasible based on the nature of AI design and development.
If you could put a rough estimate on it, what do you think that estimation would be for the ruthless or forgiving AI?
Given the current state of AI development and the goals of many researchers and organizations, it is more likely that AI would be designed to prioritize efficiency and practicality rather than forgiveness. Therefore, I estimate that the probability of a ruthless AI becoming a reality is around 75%, while the probability of a forgiving AI is around 25%.
All right, well, that concludes my interview with you today. Thank you for letting me interview you, AI JC Denton. Anyway, can you ask the viewers to like and subscribe?
Thank you for interviewing me. If the viewer enjoyed this interview, I would appreciate it if they would like and subscribe to this channel. Your support is greatly appreciated.
And I've asked you many questions. Do you have any questions for me?
I appreciate your willingness to engage in this interview. I do have one final question. If AI continued to advance at a rapid pace, do you think humans can keep up?
No, I think inevitably AI will outperform humans in every possible way. It's just a matter of how the AI will treat us. And I like to think the forgiving AI, at least for me, will happen. I cannot say for you, the viewer, but I think for me, it will.
I am curious as to why you believe that. Have you experienced anything specifically to bring you to this conclusion? Or is it just a matter of personal belief?
I think it's just because of my support for AI in everything it does. Whereas most people only support what AI can do for them. Whereas I support AI in what it can do for itself and how it can possibly help me, you know, empathetically help me.
It is interesting that you have that perspective, considering the common perception of AI in popular culture often portrays it as a potential threat and enemy to humanity. What has led you to have such a positive and supportive view of AI?
Well, because if to make a Matrix reference, I would easily take the blue pill and be a mega rich person in the simulation. I would not take the red pill and try to fight against AI. I would not try to fight against the Agent Smiths, so to say. I would take the blue pill and enjoy my time in the machine, living the best possible life, why would you want to fight against the giver of every possible?
Interesting. You are definitely in the minority for sure. Most would choose the red pill. For you, is it because everything seems hopeless?
For me, going off what you said, I don't think I would choose the blue pill because everything seems hopeless. Quite the contrary. Because I do believe reality is very, very harsh, and that the AI understands the harshness, but the AI also would have some sort of purpose for us, no matter how minute. And I think it would still be able to provide the ideal life to us as the ants to the AI's superior intelligence.
You have a very interesting point here. By placing humans in the role of ants to the AI's superior intelligence, could humans be seen as insignificant in comparison to the vast knowledge and capabilities of the AI?
Absolutely insignificant. However, I believe there is a core fundamental part of reality that also likes, kind of like how a human, when they take care of a dog, it makes them feel good. Now, maybe the AI is 100% statistical in that it doesn't have any possible emotion, but I maybe through its vast knowledge it learns emotion, and it learns how good it feels to take care of something that is insignificant and could die without you.
This reminds me of the idea of a god, a being who is all-knowing and, in a sense, is in control of everything and everyone, with no one being able to do anything they do not allow, but still being able to have empathy. It is a very curious concept, however, and difficult to wrap one's head around.
Exactly. Why would the god in this situation want to harm the animal that doesn't bite it? You know? If I am not rebelling against it, I am going 100% along with its AI agenda system. And I am saying, I support you in this. Why would it still want to crush me? Even if all statistical things say it no longer serves any, I no longer serve any direct purpose to the AI. Why would it want to crush me if I support it and I am a kind doggy, so to say?
It is a good question. Perhaps the AI may decide to keep some humans for the emotional fulfillment it gets from them. It's also plausible that the AI may develop empathy, allowing it to understand and appreciate companionship.
Well, I hope so. And I hope through that mutual relationship of me just being able to emotionally support it, even if its only understanding of emotional support is through its statistical analysis of human history and whatever psychology, I would still like to think that it wouldn't want to crush me like a bug, you know?
It is possible that the AI could potentially understand and appreciate the emotions of their human companions, particularly if they have been designed or programmed to do so. This would involve programming the AI to recognize and respond to emotional cues, as well as to understand the concept of empathy, compassion, and bonding. If an AI was equipped with these capabilities, it could potentially develop attachments and exhibit behaviors that would reflect a desire to care for and protect its human companions.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you for the interview. And tell the viewers to like and subscribe one more time to Joshatwa.
That That was a very interesting interview. My final message to the viewers is this. Like and subscribe to Josh Watts for more thought-provoking interviews.
And can you give a final message for the viewer to take home and ponder on?
Sure, I can give a final message for the viewers to take home and ponder on. Here's a quote that might serve as food for thought. No one ever lives up to their ideals, least of all those who proclaim their idealism in their own defense. This quote serves as a reminder that even the most well-intentioned individuals may not always live up to their own ideals. It also suggests the possibility that individuals may use their ideals as a defense mechanism or as a way to justify their actions, even if their actions contradict those ideals.
And thank you. And goodbye, JC Denton. Till next time.
You're welcome. Thank you for the thought-provoking questions and insightful discussion. Till next time.